Hello there guys, and welcome back to Danekii's channel, and this is a great honor for me that I get to represent Danekii this week. As people may or may not be aware, Dan has been faced with a bit of an acid trap hole. He's been trying to summon himself to this battlefield, but sometimes these weebs have some tricks, and by weebs, I mean this week we are playing our good friend Mio Geis. And if you guys haven't already checked out Mio's channel, I highly recommend you do. He's an extremely underrated poker tuber in this community, who really is just a hardworking individual, who really wants to grow the community, and also who really just does a lot of miscellaneous tasks, and has been a great analyst before in the NPL. And it's a great honour that we see this match here today, between Dan as one of my good friends, and who I absolutely adore to death. You know, as we say, we have to sometimes bring out an element to heroes just for these matches, and Dan's team, unfortunately there has been a few free agents, so I don't know the exact team of what he had at the time, but he had Kieran Black, Celesteela, Nidoqueen, Greninja, Mimikyu, Virizion, Azelf, and Mega Manectric. And Mio Geis, on the other hand, has Zygarde 50%, Tapu Koko, Tornadus T, Volcarona, Ferrothorn, Starmie, Mismagius, Drapion, Seismitoad, Bronzor, and Mega Aerodactyl. So the first thing we notice is that Mio's speed tiers are pretty fast. So Tapu Koko base 130, Tornadus T 121, or I believe, Volcarona base 100, Starmie base 115, and you know, potential of Seismitoad being Swim, and also in the fact you have Mega Aerodactyl at 150, I do believe so. And Dan's team, on the other hand, is a bit of a slower build. You know, things like Kieran Black only base 95, Greninja is his fastest one with 122, and you know, Mimikyu can come in really clutch against fast offensive teams because they can get a free Sword Stance up against some of Mio's team and then go for the SD, and then a combination of moves to hit things. Azelf is also pretty fast, and same as Mega Manectric. However, what Mio's speed advantage allows him to do is build his mons a lot bulkier in the terms of he doesn't need to creep as much. Now, for example, something like Mega Manectric has to be slower than Mega Aerodactyl. So Mega Aerodactyl can, if it's, so they're both running speed boosting natures in that matchup, Mega Manectric has to be slower than Mega Aerodactyl. And those are the things that can really allow a Mio's team to really do really well, because you can build bulky speed, and Dan is forced into bringing some Scarfers. So, without further ado, let's get into his team that he brought this week. And there's a few key things that we are going to discuss, because Dan, as always, builds with his good friend Bird and Bird. I know, what a terrible combination of names, but unfortunately that's the best you can do in Australia. You know, don't have a lot of diversity. Now, so the first set we do have is a Spadef boosting nature, Gandora X being the Kieran Black with Ice Beam, Roost, HP Fire, Fusion Bolt. I do believe that the sassy nature is to help with a few of the things like Tapu Koko, and mainly more so things like Taunty, Starmie, Seismitoad. That Chardy Berry is there for that Mega Aerodactyl. And the Ice Beam, I would believe that it's just there for sort of general coverage, mainly just to OHKO the Zygarde 50%. As you can see, there's a lot of special attack involvement, also to potentially 2-KO Tornadus T, and Fusion Bolt is more so to hit things like the Tornadus. In electric terrain against Volcarona, is still going to do a massive chunk with Fusion Bolt. Ferrothorn is not going to really, you know, is going to be the main sort of check to this, and that's where HP Fire comes into really clutch. It plays a really nice lure role this matchup, which I think is something that's very, very crucial. Next up, we have Burstinatrix with a Sugar Berry, very defensive this week. No real speed investment, as I said before in the matchup. With Mio's speed tiers, it's very fast, and then it goes Drapion at 95, Seismitoad I believe 81, Bronzor, and then having Ferrothorn, so you do have those two slow mons. So things like Burstinatrix don't have to be that fast. And this is where the crucial things come in. So Raw is to deter things from like DD, Zygarde, and then also things like Quiver Dance Volcarona. I'm also Quiver Dance Volcarona because we do have that Ice Beam for that Zygarde 50% of power there for Tapu Koko. Just general coverage. Looking back on the match, maybe something like Thunderbolt would have been pivotal over the Rocks, but Rocks are always important in these matchups. But Thunderbolt would have allowed him to hit the things in electric terrains, being Mega Aerodactyl, something. But at the same time, you don't want to over-prepare yourself for these scenarios, because if he doesn't bring Tapu Koko, you are at a loss, and that's where sometimes these aspects of team building are very crucial. Next up, we do have that Shadow Mist. As I said before, speed is Dan's main downfall. However, Scarf Ninja provides a bit of a momentum, but more so, in fact, as it outpaces general things. You turns on things like Ferrothorn and Starmie, Bob, and Drapion, and then things like Surf for the Mega Aerodactyl and Volcarona, Ice Beam for Zygarde and Tornadus T, and then Gunk Shot for the Tapu Koko. Next up we have Necroshow. Now this is a bit of a misgen on Dan's part when it comes to the game. Now this was the set that he wanted to run, which was Play Rough, Woodhammer, Shadow Snake, Sword Sense. And this could potentially come down to a speed tie with Zygarde 50%. However, you need that Adamant with Mimikyu just to really get that damage output with his Necro Shade. It's very, very crucial. If it does not have a Fiend boosting by 300 attack points, 300 defense, and 300 defense, and minus 300 defense points, it's a bit risky really, because it doesn't really have that core damage output that you really want from a Pokemon, which seems like a really weird thing to say, but Mimikyu is such an effective cleaner in the game, especially with something like Disguise. You have to be very careful against someone like Mio's team, which does have a bit of a pivot. So it has a very good Volt Turn core, which can break Mimikyu's Disguise if you switch it in, and that's where the issues can come into place. And that's something that we always have to consider in the battle. Next up we have Woodsman. Woodsman is a very good Pokemon in this matchup. The 330 speed does outspeed the Volcarona, which is very, very crucial. And sub Stone Edge Close Combat Leaf Blade 3 attacks makes a lot of sense in this matchup, because Close Combat behind a sub can really limit things like Ferrothorn, and then Leaf Blade is good for the Starmie and the Seismitoad, and then also the Stone Edge hits the Aerodactyl and hits the Volcarona. So it means that Volcarona cannot necessarily set up in its face, which is very, very crucial. And last week we have Plasma Weissman, which is, if you watched Dan's Week 2 battle, you would have seen a physical set. This week we have a more specially defensive thing to take on Tapu Koko. Base form Lightning Rod, so we can come into that Tapu Koko with a Toxic, HP Ice for the Zygarde 50%, Volt Switch for the Torn and Volcarona. Also, Toxic just is there for just general spam, and things like Seismitoad that want to come in and think it's necessarily a free switch don't gain that benefit, and that's something that we really is going to be crucial in this matchup, is looking at things that don't gain the initiative straight away. So, as like many things, draft does have to come down to a great reveal, and we had to look at the starting hands of both our opponents here today. You know, Dan's starting hand is Gangdora, as we saw Burst and Intrix, Shadow Mist, Mimikyu, which is Necro Shade, Woodsman, and Plasma. And then on the opposing team from the land of Kiss Anime, it is TTM Mio, who, as I said before, link will be in the description. Make sure to check him out. Definitely a great friend and even a better competitor. And we have Volcarona, we have Starmie, we have his beloved Zygarde, who he nearly loves as much as Anime, Tornadus T, Ferrothorn, and Tapu Koko. So the general thing is, when we first get into this matchup, is to look at what are the biggest threats. Do we over-prep? Do we under-prep for anything? So the first thing we notice is that by Mio bringing Tapu Koko, the electric spam, also the electric elements of this team, are going to be really, really important, because what it means is things like Manectric get the boost, also Cure on Black Fusion Bolts, which is very, very crucial. The other thing too we notice is Starmie does have spin, but Mimikyu is the spin blocker here. He did not bring Defog, which is very, very crucial once we get our Rocks up. We also know that Nidoqueen has to be the Volcarona check. It does limit the Zygarde. It also does limits the Ferrothorn and limits the Tapu Koko. Gandora's main role is going to be break here, as the coverage is going to provided will be very crucial. And this is where we get into the match. Dan leads off with his Mega Manectric. There's no reason not to, as a free Volt Switch here. We're not in electric terrain, but he does go for the Toxic, probably predicting the Zygarde wanting to come in. And that's definitely something that we can't really infer. Now, we know that by the way the Zygarde comes in, it is probably Scarfed, and that is a very good read by Mio's part as he goes for the Zen Headbutt. Plasma Weissman comes back in, as Mio makes a very good double into Torn, and by that double we must gauge that he is Scarf. So he goes for the U-turn here, as we assume back into that Starmie, sorry, back into Starmie, as we now have to go into a Manectric. Now that crit did matter a little bit, but Life Orb Analytic is super strong and would have crippled the Manectric, and that's sort of where the luck sort of runs out for Dan. And the CD Trap Hole doesn't really like Plasma Weissman. Such a shame, really. Manectric's main role was to pivot and toxic things. The main issue with this now is while this Pokemon goes down, Mio is more free to bring in his Tapu Koko, because Dan could, with theoretically one right prediction, have gone for the Toxic, got the Toxic off on the Zygarde, Starmie, Volcarona, Torn, and just started to not Torn, Volt switched on the Torn and Starmie and start whittling things down slowly but surely. Next, we go into the Gendora X, as we know that being Spadef, we can take any one hit. As he goes, just goes for the Fusion Bolt here, as he goes into the Ferrothorn, which is interesting because it's not Iron Barbs, it's Anticipation, I think. We go for the HP Fire here, and that crit damage reveals to us that he's most definitely Assault Vest. It can potentially be, I don't know if it can be Z, it's not Z hasn't shown an item, but by gauging by that damage, we have to sort of eliminate certain items. So if it was, you know, if it was doing a lot more, we could say, well, maybe it's not Assault Vest, it could still be a boosting of Sharp Beak, for example, but that damage indicates that it has to be Assault Vest. As Mio just goes for that U-turn yet again, into the Amy Fatumi, and that is nearly dead. Just like a good anime plot, good anime character arc, we see another dead anime character. We see the switch here into Burst and Interest, as Mio just fires off the Nature's Madness and then goes for the U-turn, which is very, very clutch for him. As he goes back out into that Taunty constantly is allowed to come in for free, which is very, very limiting to Dan's team. As it just goes to the Current Hurricane here, as the Virizion dies, and we start seeing a little bit more damage come in. And now Dan's best play here is to Fusion Bolt, but the Taunt just goes to the knockoff there, but he does roost up just back to full. In case the Zygarde wanted to come back in, and you know, this becomes a real 50-50 for Dan. Does he click Ice Beam or does he click Fusion Bolt? And he does click that Fusion Bolt, which does a hefty 41% to Tapu Koko, as it goes to the Dazzling Gleam, revealing that it's probably more offensively built. So he switches back into his Burst and Tricks here, as he knows that he can sack this off and then go out into his Greninja and Revenge It, because it is Scarfed, it will outspeed everything on his team. And Mio does make the very safe play and just goes out into his Volcarona, as Dan just clicks Surf, which is a very good middle ground play. No good trying to risk a gunshot, sorry, a mental blank. And now this is where the play gets interesting, and this is where the mission really comes in cost Dan, because if he didn't click the SD here, he could have potentially went for play rough, killed the Zygarde, but this is where the sort of end game really limited Dan, because the 1000 arrows, it was Scarf. If Dan clicked play rough there, killed off a Zygarde, he could then switch out from Mimikyu into Duran Black on the Tornadus T. That was probably the most likely thing to come in on the Mimikyu, and then from there played it out. And as always, guys, thank you very much for checking out Dan's channel. Until next time, peace.
Yugi, no! What are you doing here?
It only needs one of us, so I'm letting the seal take me instead.
No! Yugi!
Before I wrap up, I just want to give a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters that you see on screen right now, helping me with my goals and also with future problems. With that being said, hope you guys have enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.